Very well. Welcome back. Now, I think the concept of the summer school worked quite well, at least regarding the last two presentations. I think they engendered quite some discussion directly after the presentations, and as I heard, even during the coffee break now, and of course that's what we want, and you are warmly welcome, of course, to challenge the students even more. Now the next presentation changes topic actually a little bit, and also changes topic a bit from the conference itself, because we haven't spoken a lot about, well, the poorest countries in the world and what can be done potentially in these countries, say for example in Kenya, etc. So that will be a slight change now, but certainly that's also important. And there is a second smaller change which I like to note. Yesterday, and I think even today, for all the other conference presenters, we usually have very wise men who are also white, wise men. And for the younger generation, it seems to change a little bit. So you already heard Oana, who is actually, I think, the only woman presenting. But we have two other women now presenting. One is white, one is black. So that's the future, of course. And actually, there is a third person also, but somebody missed to mention her on the program. It's Evelina Nielsen from Sweden, who couldn't come because, well, not only because she is a woman, but it's not so easy to come from Sweden to Switzerland if you are pregnant in the 8th month, because you don't seem to get an insurance. So unfortunately, she can't come and present here. That was actually our intention, to have her presenting too. But you will hear the following presentation, how to reduce the influence of the power elite, and how, well, using foreigners perhaps in democratically elected institutions or in central banks may work quite well. So the presentation is held by Maria Isabel Wieser from Switzerland and Rachel Sidi Murvi from Kenya.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All of us here must be having an interest in economic systems, and that's why we are eager to hear something from it. And even if one does not have any idea of what economic systems are, at least you've got an idea about life. And maybe each one of us here wants a good life. No one would want to remain in poverty. So for us, we came with our presentation mainly speaking about the East African countries, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We want to have better lives in East Africa too. But how do we do this? So in our model, we come up with Obama for East African Central Bank president. We want to improve the living standards by allowing a foreign central bank president within a common currency area. So when we look at poverty in East Africa, let us look at poverty. The head count ratio, it is $1.25 per day when we look at the World Bank. Like in Kenya, we had 45.9% in 2005. We had Tanzania with 43.5% in 2012, and Uganda 37.5% in 2012. So that shows you that our model can work because we have the three countries at the same rate of poverty. So what can be done? According to Copenhagen Consensus 2015, they mainly concentrate on fostering health. We need to improve education. We need to strengthen institutions. We need to increase trade. We need to improve macroeconomic stability. And those are the ways to reduce poverty. For almost all those solutions to happen, then we need good governance, which is the main requirement. But what do we really want? We want macroeconomic stability in the three countries. When I say macroeconomic stability, that is going to lead to increase in investments and trade, which is the greatest benefit according to the Copenhagen Consensus. You can see there when we spend just $1, then we can gain so many dollars according to the various targets that we are targeting. That is according to the Copenhagen Consensus. On good governance, we want to lower the level of corruption, which is actually the main problem in East Africa. And if we lower the level of corruption, then we are also lowering the barriers to farm entry among the East African region. And then on microeconomic stability, we want to achieve that, and we can only achieve it in East Africa through the democratic and independent East African Central Bank. The democratic and independent East African Central Bank will lead to better governance of independent central banks. It will also lead to increased trust and credibility. It will also lead to increased investment, and it will also decrease the inflation levels in those countries. We also, when we have all those 4 elements, then we are able to lower corruption. Hence, we are increasing democracy. And we are also able to raise the living standards, which is actually our main aim. If we raise the living standards, we have less corruption, we have improved democracy. Definitely, people will have a satisfied life. With the central banks, we will have potential positive side effects which come along with it. And they include reduction in the transaction costs. Right now, if you want to transact something between the three countries, it is of much higher cost. So when we have the central bank, we will reduce the transaction cost. We will have more regional trade. One can trade freely among Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We will have price stability. Like now, the Kenyan shilling is much higher than the Ugandan shilling. It is much higher than the Tanzanian shilling. But when we have a common central bank, then you have price stability among the 3 countries. We also harmonize the export and import standards. Right now, if you want to export something or import something, they are all in the East African countries, but we have so many standards that you have to go through. But if we have a common central bank, then we can harmonize those standards. So when we bring the central bank, there are obviously some potential problems that may come along with them. 1, the main problem including corruption. The state officials, mainly politicians, they tend to manipulate the monetary policy for their own advantage. So for us to avoid corruption, we need an independent and democratic central bank. But how can we do that? Through the management. We require experts and high levels of human capital. Anyone who can do the job, anyone who is an expertise in the job can do the job. It's not necessarily somebody from the 3 countries. We should also allow foreigners to run as the central bank governance. And that is why if we allow foreigners, then they do not have any political influence among the 3 countries. So it is better for them to run it. It is currently working in Kenya with companies that are run by experts, like we have Safaricom, we have M-Pesa companies. They are run by experts, despite their nationality, despite their gender. So long as one can do the job, then you are employed to do it, and it's working very well if you don't have the political influence. And from there, I let Maria go on.
Okay, so, yeah. So, we let foreigners run for central bank president. But what structure should a central bank or our ideal central bank have? So first of all, we believe that we need a democratically and independently elected president, because people will trust their own, we need people to trust in their money, and for that, we need them to be able to decide on who is looking after their money. So but then we were discussing, okay, so we open the position for everybody, and everybody can run for central bank president, so we will have too many applications from everywhere. So we thought, so how can we make sure that the applicants are really qualified? So that's when we thought that we need an election board that makes sure that goes through the application process and everything. This board, but this board should be chosen by direct vote from the citizen, from the 3 countries that are over 18, and the president then again should be elected by the citizens. Does this seem strange? Well, not really. Managers in stock companies do say are elected this way everywhere in the world. So, what else do we need? We want to make sure that the president is supervised somehow. So we let the board stay as an advisor to the president. The board is then should be representing the three countries. So we compose it equally of people from the three different countries. Potential candidates could then be qualified citizens from the three countries without a political mandate to make sure that they don't abuse their power politically, qualified citizens from abroad, or maybe even firms and companies. But how can we make sure the president acts on the majority's interest and not on his own? We had this model and it seemed really great, and then we came up with so many reasons why this model couldn't work. So first of all, we think we need the most qualified applicants that have already proven to be great applicants, that maybe were already directors of banks or things like that. And also, the presidents should be elected regularly so that we make sure that the power is not abused. And how do we get these candidates? So that's where we say, okay, we open the borders. We don't just want applicants from the three countries. The borders should be open for all countries to apply. That countries are not an obstacle when it comes to be a good governor for a central bank. So what are the counter arguments? Foreigners would not know the traditions of the countries and could act against national interests. Maybe they don't know the traditions and they have other ethical standards. Well, we think, no, the good management of a central bank is not an issue of nationality. And there is one concrete example. Mark Joseph Carney was just chosen as a Canadian to be the first foreigner as a governor to the Bank of England for 390 years. Another argument is foreigners could take advantages of the position to make the most profit possible. We think, well, no, because these professionals would have their reputation to lose, so it's really not in their own interest to act corrupt or do a bad job. But then we thought, well, for a real issue would probably be that foreign directors would be rejected because of the fear to getting back into colonialism. And we discussed this a lot because Rachel told us this is a real fear. So we said, okay, well, this is an argument, but then let's say we just let applicants from former colonies apply. This would include India, Australia, Canada, and the US, and etc. There are more, but this would make like a huge pool of lots of people. Then another argument is, well, this process would be really, really costly. Yes, it would, but the cost of such a process are much cheaper than the cost of corruption in such a central bank. In a direct vote, people would vote on an issue they don't have enough knowledge, where we hear this argument here in Switzerland all the time. And we say, well, or studies show that people usually vote if they are more or less aware of what they are voting about. Otherwise, if they don't know what they are voting about and they want to vote, they get informed first. So would too many people apply for the position? Well, here we would have to make sure that you need an effective election campaign, and this would be really costly, so not many people would really seriously think about running for that position. So in conclusion, an electoral system and independence is a way to achieve trust and credibility in a central bank, which leads to a stable price level. And it would also lower corruption and increase democracy in the system, which would, again, lead to human satisfaction and economic growth. So, our conclusion, Obama could really run for such a position after his mandate as the President of the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this inspiring discussion and this inspiring presentation, and we will see whether Obama really wants to do that. He seems to be half Kenyan, so perhaps that's the future for him after his 2 terms as president. The floor is open for questions and comments, critical remarks, as always. Yes, please, Professor Kierman.
Oh, your microphone is not working, I think.
Oh, my microphone is here, yes. I'll try and show. Here.
Thank you very much. Now, I thought the second part was an interesting and challenging idea. The only problem is that you emphasized all the time what we need is qualified candidates, people who have some experience, as if this was somehow a technical job. And I'm not at all convinced that being the president or chairman of a central bank is necessarily a technical job. In exactly the sense that Angel Gurria, the Secretary General of the OECD, he said the problem with these technocratic governments we put in place, who are not elected, is that the job they have to do is not a technical one. It's a political and social one as well. And it's even true for central bank governors. So I'm a great admirer of Obama. But on the one hand, you say, I need guys who are really technically qualified to do this job. And I don't think that Obama at any point in his career has anything to do with central banks. So I'm not quite sure he's the ideal candidate. But I think there's a contradiction between your idea, I can get this technical guy in and he'll do the job, and thinking of running a central bank of a country as being a technical job. It's more than a technical job.
Yes.
Yeah, you want? Should I? Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't know much about running a central bank myself. But I believe, yeah, I agree. I mean, all the more, I think, yeah, it is true. You need certain assets. I mean, the quality of the running should be good, which is not essentially something technical. You have to, yeah, I think there are more aspects, like it should be transparent, for instance. There should be certain ethics that we believe in, or that we take into account. And I think in this, you're absolutely right. These are things that don't necessarily ask for technical experience, but also I believe you need some knowledge about this. That's what I believe. I mean, but I can't really.
Isn't it in your proposal already? Because you said, okay, it should be the most qualified person, perhaps the technically most qualified person, but the person should be elected. So it's not 100% sure if it's then, it could be Obama, yeah?
Can I just add a last remark, which is that there's always this impression that if you can get somebody competent, he knows how the economy works and he knows what we should do. And I think there is no such person.
Yeah.
And Mervyn King, who was the last governor of the Bank of England, said when he was leaving power, it's hubris to think that we understand how the economy works. We don't.
I think did you want to say something on the firms? I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, I lost. Can you just repeat? Sorry, I'm sorry, because just repeat the last part of your question, please. Sorry.
There's this idea that there are people around who understand perfectly how the economy works, and if only we put them in place, they'll get the job done. But Mervyn King, who was the last governor of the Bank of England, when he left the job, he said it's hubris to think that we understand how the economy works. We don't.
Yeah. I absolutely agree on that. And this is an issue. I mean, I think that, as I said, transparency, for instance, would be a really important issue that people actually, I mean, our problem, what we saw was that the monetary that the money is like, people don't believe in their own money. And this was what we thought, so how can we make people believe in their money again? So that's how we came up, well, if they vote for the person who is in charge, because they are afraid that someone is corruptly in charge of the job, so that might, even if it's just the idea, even if this person is not perfect that is elected, I don't think that's the goal, but it's that people trust in their own monetary union, and I think that was actually our goal.
Bruno, please.
Your idea is so good that you should extend it to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
We concluded that the central bank job is a political one. Why not a prime minister, a president,
Yeah.
a president of the highest courts, etc., foreigners? When we look at history, that has always been the case. In almost no country, the king comes from the national population.
Yeah.
The Germans were everywhere. And when you look at generals, they were mostly foreigners. So I think your idea is so good, you must generalize it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what we thought about. We started with the central bank, but I mean, it applies to other things too. Yeah, it was just, we started here
Yes,
because,
please.
yeah, it's a start. But yeah, I agree.
Thank you for your impressive presentation. I think your anti-corruption program is good, but it's not enough to have a person with integrity at the top. You need a whole program down the hierarchy. That's a compliance program. That means procedures and education and decent salaries. Did you think about that? Not only the man, the woman at the top, but going really down, breaking it down in the hierarchy, because corruption is really embedded.
Yeah, we gave a thought on that. And it's not like we want the person at the top not to be corrupt, or we want an expert because he can reduce corruption. And that is why we are remaining with the board as advisors. That is our first step. Of course, we didn't really come up with a situation where we could have like some governance, like a sort of rank. But with the board, I think it can at least manage and see that there is some low level of corruption. Then maybe we can go down the rank.
Yeah. Also, our idea was if the president is elected this way, then he elects the people that are in the company again. And since he's a foreigner, or he might be a foreigner, or he was elected in this system, the probability that he's going to choose experts again, in our opinion, is higher. So that was actually the idea. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yes, we had a question here first,
Yes.
and then over there, yes.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree. I mean, the idea that neutral experts, foreign experts, can run a developing country is an old one. It has one mistake. It actually has never worked. As William Easterly in this book, The Tyranny of Experts, has shown very vividly. Also, Angus Deaton, the new Nobel Prize winner, is highly critical of this aspect. The idea might be brilliant, but it has never worked. That's a slight problem.
I can respond to that, Maria.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think we looked at the central bank as a company, and this is the idea. I agree that there are problems that we neglected completely. This was just, we've really focused on this, and I absolutely agree with your opinion that there are lots of things that we neglected and that we have to take into account, and that this would not be as easy as it seems, just like this. This is, yeah, I mean, we made a model, and it's, yeah, that's just a small part of the idea.
Just to add on that, there are so many problems right now in East Africa, and we are at least towards doing one single thing that can bring a change in East Africa. We cannot improve all the problems right now. So we tried at least to make one thing work. Then if it works, then we can go to another idea, because there are actually so many things that you need to look at, considering the fact that those are still developing countries, not like the European countries.
I think you are too defensive. I would be more offensive against such a remark, actually. You were thinking about firms too. I mean, why not use firms?
Yeah, you could.
That's something different. Yes, here.
Sorry. I think it's an interesting idea, and even I think it's necessary to think about generalization of these systems. But anyway, I'm a bit critical as well, and therefore I have about like 3 suggestions or questions. First one, we have some historical experience within Renaissance towns. They had civil wars within townships, and so they called condottieri, who made something like a dictatorship. So it would be interesting to look what happens really there in this township, and that if you ever get rid of this condottieri or not. Then second point, I think it's a question as well about legitimation, and therefore I would say we cannot compare it really with monarchism. I mean, that is a completely different form of legitimation of power. That's first thing, and then it was a very weak power that came from them, because a lot of delegation to really down to the township and so on. So what is about legitimation? And the third thing, a bit question, where is exactly the difference to an occupation system as we had in Iraq or somewhere, or in Germany after the Second World War? What is really the difference when we go on this way? It's kind of an occupation system in a way. Sorry.
Yeah, you want? Should I?
No, Maria?
Well, the difference is that the people are elected by the citizens. So it's a democratic vote. So that would be the legitimation, and also that would make sure that we were thinking about setting 4 years as a timeline for running for president, for being president, and then you can run again, and then maybe you set like a limit. You say you can run twice and then it's done. So I don't think the legitimation would be a problem, and I don't think that it would turn into a dictatorship. I don't think that would be a problem. And the first one about the town...
the Renaissance town.
Yeah, the Renaissance town. Yeah, I mean, yes, of course, but it was the Renaissance time. I mean, I think it's a different approach, but also here, I mean, we have direct vote, and then we have a limited time space, and I think this would regulate it. It's not a guarantee. It never is. I mean, we don't have a guarantee here. We have a stupid Bundesrat either. But I mean, it makes sure that there is some frame to hold this.
The Renaissance towns were extremely successful if you compare them to other centralized units at the same time. So,
yeah, this argument.
Not too bad, actually. Margit, your question.
My question would be, so persons are very important, but this sounds a bit like a big man or great woman theory. So my question would be, did you take into account also solutions which are more institutional? For example, decentralization, federalism. In addition to your suggestion, I think no big man or woman could be successful without institutional underpinning. And I would also would like to have some bold new solutions. For example, in old Athens, for the election, demarchy was used, which was a selection which included random elements, and randomness is a great thing against corruption. So I would suggest to take into account both institutional solutions as well as individual or personal solutions.
Yeah, that's a really interesting remark. Thank you.
We have solved the decentralization issue already for Greece, just half an hour before that. Thank you. Here was the next question, yes?
Yes, I was interested in the idea sounds really nice, actually. Like the idea, okay, you just take a man and you put it on the top and then the corruption is going somewhere else, like, because the one man is sitting on the top. So that would be actually my question. Like, do you think that corruption is a cultural thing? Definitely. Like, we see it in Greece, for instance. They have a lot of problems with corruption. We heard it yesterday. And now you're coming and you're saying, okay, if we just make a central bank, then the corruption is, I don't know, disappearing because the cultural ties between the people who are living in these three countries, they're not there anymore. Or I don't know how you thought about that, like this idea of putting one man to the top and then corruption, who's actually, a cultural thing, is disappearing.
It is not like when we put one man at the top, we will have corruption totally disappearing. But we decided to put mainly a foreigner to be the president of the central bank, because most of the people who are so much into corruption are the people with the political influence. And that's why we didn't want to have anyone from the three countries or anyone having any influence in the East African countries. That's why we are bringing a foreigner. At least he'll not have so much influence in the country, so that can at least help to reduce the corruption, but maybe not totally eradicating it, but at least the corruption levels will be low than if we had someone from the countries.
One more question here, yes? Here, then you, and behind.
It's the same question, just added, didn't we do that the last 70, 50 years with colonialism? The last 100 years?
No.
300 years? Didn't we do nothing else than having foreigners in African countries running the country, and that's where we're now? Isn't that's what happened?
Elected.
Didn't we have, maybe I don't know the history of Africa so well, didn't we have central banks run by European people? I guess, or?
Well, I mean, the thing is, still, and again, they would be elected. We don't say it's going to be a foreigner. That's not our suggestion. The idea of eradicating corruption is the democratic election, not the idea of a foreigner that comes and does a great job, and then this is colonialism. That's when we think we know the solution and we should put it everywhere in the world. That is absolutely not what we are suggesting. We are really suggesting a democratical approach to that. And the idea was, we were very skeptical because we thought nobody is going to elect a foreign president. That's why we have been focusing on why shouldn't people elect a foreigner. But it could totally be an African person. I mean, most likely it's going to be someone from the countries. Is that not what you wanted to hear?
No, I'm just hearing all the time the word, if it's voted democratically, if it's voted democratically. I'm highly questioning if right now these countries, we are bringing them democracy. I mean, you are also imposing already the solution of democracy on them. What we did also the last years. I mean, I'm not wanting, we're opening now a global political stage by saying it's the same thing we do right now in Iraq and Iran, things we impose on them and saying they have to do it democratically, and if they do it, it works. I'm not so sure, I'm not so good in history in these countries, but what I hear is that all these governments are elected democratically in Africa, and we have many dictatorships there, revolutions, wars, and there is democracy somehow.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It has to be more than that, and just...
Let's get some more questions, perhaps.
Can I just make one remark?
Yes,
because
of course.
I think, the African countries, they can elect already, right? I mean, it's not that they don't know election. And honestly, if you ask these people if they don't want to vote, what's this? I mean, I don't know, but now they know what it means to vote. And now you tell them, well, no, do your own system. Yeah, you could try, but right now they are in a democratic system as well. And I think it's not, I mean, it's not impossible to, of course I see all the obstacles that would be in such an indirect vote system, I absolutely do. But I mean, you can start, and after a while, if people get used to vote, I don't think they would be really happy to get back where they cannot vote.
We have a direct remark, as I see it, on the previous point.
I totally reject what you said. The point is we must overcome nationalism.
Yeah.
What happened in Switzerland? The second largest bank in Switzerland is run by a black man. And that is progress. Yeah. And not that, that you cannot choose whomever you want.
Yeah. And next one, yeah.
Yeah, and it's more. The Financial Markets Supervisor Authority is led by a British. Mm-hmm. So, where's the problem?
Exactly, it's really overcoming this constraint that we only think within borders, and now we are opening. Precisely. So, yeah. Oh, here, okay.
No. Hi. So my question or my impression, I'd like to say, I think that there might be some logical problem as far as I see it, because in my eyes, your solution is as well the assumption that your solution works. That means that in some way you try to overcome corruption by the installation of such a central bank. Because then you have a person who is not, who doesn't follow only his personal interest and so on and so forth. But that already suggests that you have a legal framework in which the people will accept such a person and won't try to influence his work in a certain way. So in order to make such a person work, you already need the infrastructure that allows such a person to work. And this is not the case yet. This is the reason why you have corruption. And this is not solved by the installation of the central bank.
Yeah, well, we took the central bank because they are actually talking about putting up a central bank. That's why we were talking about this issue. And we were just thinking, so what would an ideal central bank look like? I absolutely, yeah, it's clear. I mean, some institutions are not working fully, maybe. But I mean, yeah, you can, why not start, and I think after a while people would get used to vote as well. I mean, that's, yeah. And they would be, yeah, able to do these decisions.
But, maybe to precise what I want to say, like, for example, if I rule a country, let's say I rule a country, and then someone else comes and makes, installs a new institution in this country. So, but I still want to have the power. Why should I let this person work in case that he might actually reduce my influence? Why should I do that? So, because that's the whole problem right now. That's the whole point that we say, okay, there are power elites that sort of block or inhibit certain economic progress for a country. Therefore, we need a new institution which actually works in a certain way and sort of makes the way around these power elites. But I mean, the institution doesn't sort of remove these power elites. So they need these power elites. They need the framework which is set by the power elites. And they wouldn't, I mean, why should they accept the reduction of power? Yeah.
Yes?
It is actually a proposal. We are not like bringing someone to come and maybe start ruling against the people who are already there. And the main issue as to why we are bringing a foreigner to come and work for the central bank is because we do not want to have any influence with the leaders who are already in the three countries. The person should not be necessarily from Europe, but the person can also be from other African countries. Like South Africa is much developed than the East African countries. Then our proposal is that person from South Africa can come and govern the central bank, just to act as the main manager in the central bank. That is the main business, but he's not coming there to have any political influence. And we do not want to have any political influence in the central bank.
So here you have at least one concrete proposal, and if it's more fundamental, then it still remains a good proposal. I think, yes, we have in the back a remark.
Hello. I happen to be from one of the East African countries, which is Kenya. And thank you for your presentation. I like the proposal, and it really looks good. My only worry is the undermining of these central bank president, because the central bank, as you propose it, it doesn't work on its own. It works in collaboration with other institutions. So my only worry with the proposal is that the president may be undermined, and then it leads to all the same things, which will lead back to politics, and it may not work in practice. In theory, I really like the idea, and I wish everybody thought and had the same mindset, but practically, in companies, it can work because companies are privately owned, but institutions that work in collaboration with governments, I'm sorry, I don't see it working. It's just a comment, it's not a criticism.
You want to say something?
Yes, so I think we have three, let's take 3 more questions. Quick ones, please. So I have here one, Hans, and Margit, you have a final remark for mine. Okay, Hans first, and then you, please. Yeah, here.
I have a question for Rachel Sidi. And basically, there's no doubt I like your idea with just changing the leaders and taking leaders from outside. And Bruno just mentioned for Switzerland, it seems to be absolutely no sensitive issue that the second largest bank all of a sudden has a leader, a CEO with a different color, not from this country, which it's a huge step, but we took it as normal. That's at least my feeling. Now we come to your continent, and your continent as well has a very different and a long history. And we all agree that your idea is good. You need sometimes in some networks some foreign leaders for these things. But how can you imagine if the head of the central bank of maybe Kenya becomes a European, a white one, given the history of colonialism? Is this possible, or would it be? Should we just exclude the Europeans or just take Asians? No, and it's I was thinking this.
No.
Is this possible? And the objective is to advance your countries. We do not want any more power plays. They want to advance. Is it really feasible to bring in maybe British, Germans, Spanish, or French who had on their country, their origin has as well a very special history and relation, which is not always the best one to your countries.
Yeah, we did mention that.
Can you forget?
And we actually say that we could work with the former colonies. Like Kenya was colonized by the Britons, then one of them could work. But we actually gave Obama there because Obama is a half Kenyan, and people will not really reject him. They would easily accept him. Like he was in Kenya for a summit, and everyone was so fascinated because Obama is back. So Obama in such a position, people will not reject him.
Here, one short question, please, and then Margaret at the end.
Oui, merci. Thank you. Well, we heard just a minute ago the question, so where is the problem? I'm not sure I will give the solution. But the problem of egoism is old. 4 billion years ago, it started with life. And 150 years ago, Darwin was noticing that if sometime once my theory will be found wrong, then it's probably going to be around the problem of altruism. And altruism is a very strange thing. And now we want to have altruistic people. And life has tried 4 billion years to use it a little bit, but it has been found to be very difficult. And but however, one thing come out is that to help somebody to be altruistic, it's very important to look very carefully at him to be sure that he keep his effort. And democracy is all around that. As I said, I am not sure I have the solution of your problem with this remark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we may take this as a comment, and now a final question or final remark. Margit, yes?
I would like to refer to your objection that the system you're suggesting is not enough to fight against corruption, because this person, be it elected as the way you suggest, is embedded into a society, into elites, which still are corrupt, and that's a great problem. So I would like to take the opportunity to really illustrate a bit the idea of demarchy, or the introduction of randomness into institutions. And this idea of demarchy was realized in the old Athens during the golden times of Athens, and in Venice in the Middle Ages as well. And they did it exactly to fight against corruption. Because if you first select people in the way you're suggesting, and then having a pool of candidates where a random selection takes place, then this is a really efficient, idea to fight against corruption. So I would suggest to take these governance principles, which had a long, long history, into account into your suggestion.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for all these comments and for all these questions, and thank you very much for presenting this interesting idea and interesting proposal.